This is Johnny with Tiger Bomb MMA, and tonight I'm going over UFC Fight Night, Aspinall versus Tybura, taking place in London, England, in the O2 Arena. I'm going to give you my thoughts and predictions, as I usually do, about all 15 bouts. It's going to be a fun overall card. I'm happy it takes place relatively early, at least for me anyway. So by around 3 p.m. is when the main card's going to start. So I got shit to do in the afternoon, so I'm excited for it. Before I break down this card, I wanted to give you my thoughts on the previous card, which would have been the Holm versus Bueno Silva card, so I'll get right into that. Here's my little indicator for editing. All right, first fight of the night. To get started, I actually just had one parlay and a couple bets. I forgot to track them, but the parlay had, well, I'll get to it, but first fight of the night, Aline Perez defeats Ashley Evans-Smith. Not really much to say there. As expected, I didn't really think anything else would happen. Maybe Ashley Evans-Smith possibly lands something significant, but she didn't do anything. She's 36, she hasn't fought in forever, and Perez is training with Colby Covington, and it showed. Next bout, Alex Munoz versus Carl Deaton. Pretty bad fight. One could say it was hard to judge. In reality, it was. I think the judges gave it like 29-28 and 30-27 Munoz, which I would have given Deaton at least one round, possibly even a split. Deaton, he needs to move the 45. If they give him another shot, he's going to have to move the 45. Munoz, for me, he looked very rusty, obviously, not being in the cage for a long time. And also, having the knee surgery. He had good power. He just didn't seem to be very confident in himself in that fight. The moment he actually got it to the ground, which is funny enough, with a knockdown, he was just rocking this boy all over the place. But he showed to have a bit more confidence in that spot, but he needed to let the hands go a little bit more. Next bout, Azat Maxim versus Tyson Nam. Realistically, it was a split decision for Maxim. I personally thought Nam did enough. It's not like I'm not really confident saying that he won the fight. They were really close, but for me, it would have been round number 1 and round number 3, Tyson Nam, but it was appropriate. Like, I would have felt better if they gave it to Nam because he worked hard for it, but it is what it is. Maxim showed some good boxing, some good jab work. He actually hurt the eye of Tyson Nam, which is what I think caused the judges to then give him the rounds. I mean, he is causing more damage. It is what it is. Next bout, Evan Elder defeats Genaro Valdez. Here's one of my plays that didn't plan out. I actually took Valdez at like +2 something. I thought he could do something later in the rounds, which he did. He actually dropped Evan Elder, which, funny enough, they gave him that second round for Valdez. I still thought even after the knockdown, because they both hurt each other, I think Evan Elder still did enough to win that round. So for me, it was 30-27 Elder. But yeah, Valdez just, I don't know, he was just super hesitant, and Elder had a really good account of himself. So props to anyone who took Elder by decision. Like, I think it was always that, because Valdez is a scrappy dude. He refuses to get finished sometimes, and it showed here. But yeah, it was an interesting bout, and I hope they give Valdez another fight. I don't know what they're going to do with him. They have to give him lesser competition so he can beat the crap out of him. Next bout, Ms. Quael. Costa defeats Austin Lingo. I had Costa in a 3-leg parlay. Or actually, sorry, 4-leg parlay. That was like my real bet for the night. I had to recoup from my losses from the previous card. And in this one, I wasn't positive really how good Costa is. All I knew is that he actually throws kicks. And boy, ever did he throw kicks. He literally quite possibly beat the piss out of Austin Lingo with those body kicks. There was a moment, because I'm so like, oh shit, I don't want to lose this bet. This is my only bet for the week, where Costa gets potentially hit by Lingo and it looks like he's going down, but he actually drops down for a takedown. So I thought he got knocked out. So I was like freaking out for a second, but then you see him on top of him kind of throwing punches. I'm like, oh, he went for a takedown. Silly me. I was so anxious and nervous about this fight, because I don't truly believe Costa's like an elite level guy, but he was made to look elite against Austin Lingo, who he's just a brawler, right? Like, I took Lingo against Landwehr because if it became a brawl, his toughness, which really did show, might overcome the technical aspects of Landwehr. Didn't go well for me. In this case, faded the guy who doesn't kick, and it played out well for me. Next bout, Victoria Dudakova defeats Estela Nunes. I didn't pick Nunes, but I was hoping she would win, and then the absolute worst thing happened to her. I don't really want to get into it too much, but obviously her elbow dislocated. It was haunting, those screams like on the ground. I didn't really particularly like it. But me being me, of course, I'm going to make a joke about her getting hurt, where I said that her body rejects wrestling so much that her elbow snapped defending a takedown. Dudakova, she didn't really get to show what she can do. to me, realistically, I thought she was in trouble. If Nunes's takedown defense and her body would be able to withstand the wrestling a bit more, I think she was countering very well, despite the fact that it was like, what, 34 seconds? I thought for those 34 seconds, Nunes looked pretty good. Moving on, Melsik Bagdasaryan defeats Tucker Lutz. All I really have to say about this is that Bagdasaryan, he needs work for sure. On the feet, he's an absolute menace. But for me, Tucker Lutz, thinking he won that fight really pissed me off. Like round number 1, yeah, give it to Lutz. He held the legs enough. And that bothered me a lot. The fact that Melsik did some good work on the feet. It was really close. But then Lutz gets him against the cage, holds him down, wraps his legs up, and then really nothing happens other than control time. Realistically, you could still technically give it to Melsik if you're wanting to be petty, but yeah, I would have given it to Lutz. Round number 2, a little bit better for Melsik, really lays it on Tucker Lutz quite handedly. Easy round for Bagdasaryan. Round number 3, how in the world did Lutz think he won that round? Like, he got his ass beat. He held him for a little bit. Melsik got back up, started beating the shit out of him. Ain't no way he's losing this decision, and he's got his hand up. That really bothered me, and I like Lutz. I think he's serviceable. I think if you can pick him in the right spot against certain guys, he's going to perform, and I look forward to seeing him in the UFC again. If they give him a low-level guy, I think he's going to whip his ass, but it was like kind of pissed me off with that hand-raising thing. It's kind of weird, too. Like, I should be more mad at Melsik, who was part of my 4-leg parlay. I was a little worried there, but like he pulled it out, and I was more mad at Lutz for thinking he won. That's kind of crazy on my part. Nazim Sadikov defeats Terrence McKinney. Not really much to say there. I had this fight doesn't go the distance, and there was a couple fights that I was considering betting doesn't go the distance. I got less greedy this time because I would have put another fight, which was controversial, as the doesn't go the distance prop on my parlay. I chose this one just because it's like the no-brainer. If McKinney doesn't get the first round submission or knockout, Nazim's going to finish him in the later rounds, which is exactly what happened. We got a back take with a body triangle in the first round for Terrence McKinney. Nazim puts on the pressure in the second round, and then he finishes him with a nasty rear naked choke with the arm behind the back. So props to Nazim. I like Nazim quite a bit. We'll see how he continues at the lightweight division. He already beat one of the more dangerous guys. He seems to be holding up pretty well. He seems very skilled. I'm just interested to see what his cap is, so we'll see on that. Norma Dumont defeats Chelsea Chandler. I lost my half a unit bet on Chandler. It was disappointing, not to say anything else, really. It was just she couldn't do anything. Like, she moved forward, she bullied her a little bit, and then she kind of crashed into her, and Dumont just said, well, I can get easy takedowns. This bitch ain't going to do shit off of her back. There was a couple moments where in like the third or second round, Chelsea looked to have an arm or a triangle choke kind of locked in or borderline. Like, all she had to do was like adjust the angle, and she could have potentially gotten at least a threat of the triangle, some sort of movement from Dumont, possibly sweep or get back up. It almost seems like Cesar Gracie only has her in the gym to possibly fondle her because she didn't really learn anything off of her back or really in jiu-jitsu period. I like her top control when it comes to like the ground and pound, but it was poor. It was more of Chelsea Chandler looking bad than Norma Dumont looking good, because Norma really didn't look all that great. I think she was very hittable. I mean, I love Norma Dumont. A lot of people know I love Norma Dumont, the dump truck. It's just that, like, she could have finished. She could have done more. Granted, she gave the internet a meme of the lifetime where she cracks Chelsea and she kind of runs across the cage like a moron. So that was fun. Jun Young Park defeats Albert Duraev. I had money still on the line, right? I screamed my guts out when he hurt Duraev in the second round. Like, when he had him in that guillotine choke in the first round, I was like kind of getting a little bit of respect for Duraev. Then I'm like, nah, fuck this guy, because he was surviving well. That was a really good choke for Jun Young Park. So much so that Dustin Poirier probably creamed his pants a little bit. But when it came to the gas tank and the pressure of Jun Young Park, the Iron Turtle, combating the shittiness of Albert Mashidi Duduev, it wasn't a match, really. Like, I was surprised that he choked him out. I thought he was going to knock him out. The fact that he choked out Duraev, to me, it's just like beautiful. The fact that he did that little dance while the man's probably on his knees crying that he got finished by Jun Young Park was beautiful. The fact that he's smiling and doing that little dance, oh man, I can't express how much that made me like extremely happy. Like, had I lost my money in my parlay, I would have been perfectly fine just reliving that moment because I do not like Duraev. Like, he's one of the very few MMA fighters that I do not like. Just leave it at that. If you know, you probably know. But yeah, next bout, Francisco Prado defeats Otman Azaitar. That was my final leg. Frankly, though, I like Prado a lot, but there was a couple moments there that gave me a ton of scare. Like, Otman was landing to the body very nicely, like hard shots. And Prado was just kind of like, it almost seemed to me like he knew he was going to win. And that is, like, to me, visually selling me the idea that, like, this fucker's going to get knocked out or he's going to lose a decision just by not doing anything. Luckily, he did land the spinning back elbow, drop the guy. His ground and pound, I keep saying, is ridiculous. And to me, when it comes to that stoppage, he knocked him out like 4 times, then he woke him back up. So I've got no problem with the stoppage. The fact that I made like $500 on that parlay has nothing to do with that. I'm not biased at all. He knocked out the potato smuggler, so I'm happy with that. Jack Della Maddalena, great fight with Basil Hafez. So to me, there's a lot of rumblings on the internet saying that Jack Della had bad fight IQ. I don't necessarily think that. And I'll explain, because he was jumping guillotine quite a bit. And the other portion of that narrative is that Hafez is super tough, 100% true. Do I think that the split decision went to the right person? 100%, no doubt, 100% guaranteed. The reason I understand why people are saying that Hafez probably won the split are really ass backwards when it comes to like judging. Like, I often hear a lot of people online and rumblings about like control time, and they're counting certain strikes more so than the grappling. In reality, it is 50-50 when you look at it. Like, you judge the grappling portion of a round and then the striking portion of the round. So in the first round, Jack Della and Hafez, they were pretty close. You could say that Jack, for the sake of argument, had the better of the striking. But what happened in that particular round, Hafez had more control time. He had more dangerous spots. He had him in an arm triangle. It wasn't going to get finished or anything. Like, he had it tight. He just wasn't going to finish it, but he had that moment. You can't deny him that round number 1. Round number 2, you judge it the same way. It was more striking and then like a little bit less grappling. Who won the striking exchanges? Jack Della. Who won the grappling exchanges? Well, Hafez did. So how do we gauge that one? Who had the more damage? Jack Della had the more damage. 100%. He did more damage. He had better moments. And it was more so Jack Della having a momentary lapse of judgment where he went for that guillotine choke, which, let's be honest, man, like, if you get the guillotine choke, it's not a crazy thing to go for it, especially if you think you have it locked in. I give more credit to Hafez for just being that good. Like, yeah, Jack Della probably shouldn't have done it many times, but like, it was worth a shot. He thought he had the guy hurt. He thought he was tired. He didn't really know how damn good he was going to be and how resilient he was. So I don't blame Jack Della for having a really tough fight. But yeah, round number 2 for me, Jack Della. And round number 3 again, Jack Della. Like, it was an ass whooping to the point where he rocks Hafez. Hafez is taking like terrible shots. So for me, it should have been a clean sweep, 29-28 for Jack Della. I don't blame any of the judges for thinking that Hafez won, especially like if you're so used to the criteria of like, well, you had the control time. Control time for me ain't shit unless you do something with it. You can't just hold a guy. You can't be on top of him, breathing heavy and sweating on him and thinking you're going to win a round by winning minutes. For me, of course, Jack Della did the more damage. And it's not the fact that damage is the end-all, be-all, because I have scenarios in my head, and I go over this with a lot of the judges that I talk to when I'm doing like my courses and doing judging myself. It's like, how do you judge a fight where the damage is done primarily by one guy early, and I mean really early, in the first 30 seconds, the guy lands an elbow, cuts him, and then he potentially like stumbles the guy. In the first 30 seconds, the guy who got hurt recovers, takes him down, and doesn't really do a ton of damage, but he controls them. He puts them in bad situations. He goes for submissions. They aren't necessarily tight, but he essentially dominates the remainder of that round. Yes, the damage was given to the guy who caused it, but it wasn't enough because it was such a small amount of time in a 5-minute fight or a 5-minute round. So you have to give it to the guy who did the control time. So it's all kind of funky, especially when it comes to like a case-by-case scenario. But in this case, clear as day, Jack Della wins that fight. So let me know if you think any differently, but I know you're wrong because I'm right. Anyways, main event, Mayra Bueno Silva defeats Holly Holm by ninja choke. what's funny about the ninja choke, and I always stress this, like I'm not an expert at jiu-jitsu. I'm just not an idiot, and I've done enough of it to know that a ninja choke, it's a fun thing to get on people who don't know what they're doing. And I think for me, Holly made a big ass mistake in that situation, because the moment you get the ninja choke, the arm goes under the neck, and before, for example, the arm could be fully extended into a figure four and then put under the chin, it's the responsibility of that fighter who's pushing against the cage, which is usually where it happens, to disengage. Holly got super greedy and decided to go from pushing her against the cage, kind of stalling, to then going for, I think, a single leg, which she didn't defend the neck. She just kind of panicked, and she deserved to get caught, which I'm like kind of happy about. Like Mayra Bueno, for me, I thought she was going to win regardless, even though I think she lost the first round. It was just kind of like a, really, Holly, are you really that dense? But I'm glad Mayra Bueno got the submission. Good submission. Like, it's a very low percentile choke, because again, you can't really trick a lot of pro fighters with that ninja choke. The fact that she got it on Holly, the fact that she actually completed it perfectly, like hiding the hand behind the chin, like you could potentially, like if you're good enough to defend chokes, if you were to spin out of it, potentially get out of it. But the way that Mayra had it locked in, it was like, yeah, Holly's going to either tap or go to sleep. So I'm pretty happy with that night. Like, I didn't win all my bets. The main one won. I only lost like maybe a little bit of money. My main goal was to make enough money to get tickets for the next event, which would be UFC 291 in Salt Lake. So the tickets, like, let's be real, man. Like, I want to go. I'm not a broke motherfucker. It's just more so like I don't feel justified in spending like $500 on nosebleed seats. So I'm still debating on it. So if I can make enough money on this card coming up, I might end up just going, because I'd rather use the casino's money than my actual money. So let's get started with the card. Let's switch over to the first fight of the night, which I'm excited about all these fights. But the first fight we have here, we've got Rafael Filho versus Daniel Barez. The current odds have it at -105 for Barez, a newcomer, and Filho is -120. So the Spaniard, he is coming in. I'm surprised he's nearly 35 years old. Like, I remember seeing him in the Contender Series. I thought he had a great fight with Carlos Hernandez. I thought Barez won that fight, and I wasn't mad. Like I find it crazy how I remember where I'm at when I'm watching certain fights. I'm like going to a gas station, watching this Contender Series fight on my phone, getting like whatever the fuck I was getting at the time. Remember thinking like, oh, I think Barez wins that fight. As I'm pumping gas, I hear the announcement that Hernandez won. I was a little bummed, because like I want more Spanish representation in the UFC, because I think they're interesting fighters. And Barez is a very interesting fighter. He seems to have like a complete package. He's 16-5. He has a lot of good volume. He moves forward. He attacks the body well. I think he's solid. I believe he's a brown belt in jiu-jitsu, if my calculations are correct. Yeah, he's a brown belt. He has good power. It's just that Rafael Filho, I respect the guy a little too much to kind of blindly fade the guy, right? I think he's solid. He's training at Novo União. He's a dangerous fighter. And I think the most dangerous aspect about him is that he is kind of like a lazy guy. And what I mean by that is that he doesn't really do much. He kind of relies on his power a little too much, which could really lull guys to sleep, in the sense that like, oh, he's not doing anything. Let me move forward and attack his ass. And then he hits you with something you're not expecting. Like, his ground game is good. We saw what he did to Mokaev, nearly broke his fucking knee. He's a good fighter. It's just that I think Barez is just too good, and I think he's a minute winner. I think he's going to be able to just put on the volume. He needs to be very defensively sound, which he does have good defense when it comes to like the hands always up to his chin, very well protected. I'm just checking to see if he is potentially at a dog odds at all, because I think the line might have changed. Yeah, he is. So as of right now, I think he's like floating around +100, +112, depending on where you do your online gambling. I'm going to pick Barez. I think he wins this one at a minimum a decision. I will probably put a bet on him if he's still at dog odds when I go to the casino, because I think he can win. It's a very dangerous fight for the guy, because he's beating guys outside the UFC relatively easily, like knocking them out. And the one time he fought a guy who is UFC caliber, in the sense of Carlos Hernandez, who I think is a very talented fighter. Like, I will always praise Carlos Hernandez, who I think he's going to eventually get really goddamn good. And I think he showed last time where he knocked the fuck out of Bandar, which I'm ecstatic about. Like, that knockout with that slam was fantastic. But with Barez, I don't know what his cap is. So it could be that a guy like Filho is his cap. So if I'm going to lose money on a guy, I'd rather lose money on him at dog odds. So I do think he wins this fight. Take him by decision. Probably take him at dog odds. Next bout, Bruna Brazil versus Shauna Bannon. So this fight, I'm not going to spend too much time on. I think Bruna Brazil is definitely a very good fighter when it comes to kickboxing. For MMA, I'm not truly sure. I've seen clips of her training for this fight where she's looking like an absolute animal, which is contradictory to what my opinion is of her. My opinion is of her, who I think she's fucking lazy. In her last fight against Gomes, she kind of just let herself get bullied in there. Like, she was waiting too much. She was like trying to counter. Her hands were low. She just looked like a completely terrible fighter who did not belong in the UFC. And the thing about that is that I think Shauna Bannon probably herself doesn't belong in the UFC, but she is the dog here. She's plus 105 compared to the minus 130 of Bruna Brazil. I do see Shauna getting her ass beat eventually in the UFC. I just don't know if this is the fight where that happens. Is Bruna capable of beating Shauna? Yeah, 100%. I think she's talented. It's just that she doesn't necessarily have the output. Shauna at least has well, I should say that she's got, I think, a Taekwondo background. She's not very good, all right? Off of her back, not great, but she moves forward. She is very green, 100%. She's obviously 5-0 currently, and green in the sense that, yes, she's Irish, but like, she's just not ripe yet for the UFC. I don't know why she's in the UFC. She's very capable of winning this fight just with pressure, and I think Bruna doesn't like that pressure, and I think because they're both relatively the same size, they're both in the similar skill set where it comes to the kickboxing. I think Bruna is going to probably have to wrestle here. And if she does, you know, she can squeak out a victory. But if she doesn't, if Shauna just refuses to lose, I think Bruna will eventually accept the loss in probably the first round. And she'll be like, well, live to fight another day, as she's like not doing anything, getting held against a cage. I'll go with Shauna Bannon. Again, I don't have any real inkling as to who's going to really win because, number one, it's women's MMA. It's kind of low level. I think Bruna has a better level of competition that she's fought, but you can't really trust a girl like her. Not until I see a different shift in her. If she comes out here and if she shows me what she's been doing on Instagram, just being more aggressive, then props to her, right? I'll take the loss like a champ, but I'll take a shot on Bannon, who, although I don't like what I've really seen from her, I do at least like the fact that she's got the fighting spirit, and I don't think Bruna does. Moving on, we've got Chris Duncan versus Yanao Ashmouz. The problem, Chris Duncan, he is the slight favorite here, minus 115. Come back on Red Fox, Yanao Ashmouz. Great name, by the way, Red Fox. He is minus 105. 7-0 versus 10-1. So this one's kind of interesting because both guys I don't have the greatest opinion on. I kind of favor Yanao mainly because I know how good he is capable of being. It's just for whatever reason, he doesn't really display that. Like, my biggest criticism about the guy is that although I think he's absolutely a great athlete, very explosive, kind of funny because he's from the Middle East, so explosive might not be the best word to use, but I like the fact that he is very dynamic. There you go. Very dynamic. He hits hard. He is like completely stacked, jacked, super, super athletic. Like, you see this guy doing flips and shit. He doesn't fight that way. And that was my biggest criticism when I took Sam Patterson to beat him last time out. I picked Sam. I put money on Sam, and he knocked him out incredibly quickly. And I'm like, that's the guy who I need to see. He needs to fight more like that, more aggressive. Like, he needs to avoid anything major and then just kind of bum rush. And then at that point, because he's more of a wrestler type, that's kind of my criticism, is like he prefers to kind of grapple instead of using his God-given gifts. He can be a little bit boring and he can be a bit predictable. And I think he can get out-muscled by Chris Duncan here, he's a big guy. He's a big, strong guy. Doesn't move his head. He's very hittable. He gets wobbled a lot. He loses, in my opinion, to the faster guys. Ashmouz will be the faster guy. I think it's a very evenly matched fight. if it hits, say, for example, like the later rounds, it can be very close. But early on, I think Ashmouz has a very good chance to knock the fuck out of Chris Duncan, who he's so hittable, and that's my biggest criticism. And I think if Duncan decides to want to grapple here, I think Ashmouz, who trains with like solid wrestlers, like he just surrounds himself with the enemy. I think he can definitely defend some takedowns. I just really don't know how great his cardio is when it's like two guys kind of pushing on each other, which this could be a very sloppy fight, or it could be a very fun fight for Ashmouz to detonate the chin of Chris Duncan. I'm not a Chris Duncan fan. I don't think he belongs in the UFC. If he doesn't win this fight, you better believe I'm fading him the next fight. But I'll go with, or I should say, if he does win this fight, I'm fading him the next fight. But for Ashmouz, I'm taking him by knockout first round. Kind of a meme pick. I do really get a feeling that this could probably go up all 3 rounds and it might be boring, but I'm hoping that Ashmouz does what I think he's capable of doing and knocks out Chris Duncan. Moving on, we've got Ketlen Viera versus Pannie Kianzad. The best way I can describe this, the odds are currently -200. Viera comeback on Kianzad is +160. The easiest way to describe why I'm picking Ketlen Viera and not giving you a real explanation is that I think there are, when it comes to women's MMA, and especially in these divisions, there's a hierarchy where it comes to like the types of fighters you got. Obviously, you've got like the championship level guys, or gals, I should say. Like, unfortunately, you've got your Juliana Peñas, you've got your, Amanda Nunes's, like the higher level caliber girls, right, to an extent. Below that, at the very bottom, you've got, this is bantamweight, the absolute scrubs, the nobodies, the girls that don't belong, the girls that are only here for like their looks. Like, what's a good example at bantamweight? Who sucks at bantamweight? Is Molly Meatball bantam? Let's go with Molly Meatballs. So above that, you've got girls like Ketlen Viera. You've got girls with like Ketlen Viera who are very skilled in the sense where she's a judo black belt. She's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. And I think she's just overall better than Pannie. It's just that she's so mentally blocked by herself. She doesn't believe in herself. That's her biggest issue, is that she doesn't pull the trigger, and she'll lose to girls like Raquel Pennington, who unfortunately, now that Nunes is gone, she is a championship level caliber fighter. And I think Pannie is below that. Pannie's the type of girl that will beat the girls like Lena Landsbergs, who are at the bottom. She'll beat girls like Sarge Eubanks. Jesus Christ. Like, I think she could rule that division if there were nothing but like Lena Landsbergs and Sarge Eubanks. Pannie, that is. But when you get to a level slightly higher with Ketlen Viera, who actually have grappling, who have striking, who have jiu-jitsu, it's going to be tougher. Don't bet this fight. Don't do that to yourself. I'll go with Viera by decision. Next bout, Bryan Barberena versus Mahmoud Muradov at middleweight. So Bam Bam's moving up. And I've said it before, like if Bam Bam wins this fight, he's a +230 underdog. There should be talks about him being the BMF. Just give him a title, because he used to be a fucking lightweight, moved up to welterweight. We saw what he did to the now retired Robbie Lawler, who beat a guy that realistically could give Bryan Barberena a really tough fight in Nico Price. And now he's moving up to fight one of the hardest guys in middleweight. Although he's not like a top-level dude, he's a very dangerous man in Mahmoud Muradov, the guy who likes to touch himself on camera. God damn it, someone told me about it. I had to look up the pictures, and it ruined my life, and I can never look at Mahmoud the same again after I saw those pictures of himself. But Mahmoud, this is the easiest fight he's going to have in a while. I thought he made some good improvements in his last fight against Caio Borralho, where he looked fine in the grappling. Not great. He needs some improvements, but we know how good his boxing is. We know how fast he is. I think he's gonna, I hate to say it, knock out Bryan Barberena. I don't think Bryan's gonna really be able to present anything that Mahmoud Muradov hasn't seen before. He's fought a really good grappler. He's fought a really good prospect in Caio, and now he's fighting Bryan Barberena. And I don't want to disrespect Bryan. I love Bryan, but I'll give him the respect to say that Mahmoud finishes him in the third. because Brian can take an ass whooping. Brian, again, I love Brian. I love his style. There's certain little things about Brian that I think are underappreciated. Like when you go into the pocket, he loves to throw like an up elbow to like kind of catch you, as he's not only protecting himself with the elbows up, but he's trying to cause damage and cuts. Like there's little things, his pressure, his pace. He's a fantastic fighter. He's a great brawler. It's just, again, I don't know why he's moving up to middleweight. Like, I give the man props. I kind of hope he wins, but realistically, I can't go against Muradov on paper. Starches him. Probably knocks him out like maybe 7 out of 10 times and goes to a decision because Brian's such a badass 3 out of the 10. So I'll go with Mahmoud Muradov by a 3rd round TKO. All right, moving on, we've got heavyweight bout. We've got Mick Parkin versus Jamal Pogues. So I don't know a whole ton about Mick Parkins here, other than I know he trains with Aspinall. He's a big boy. He is plus 120 against Pogues, who is minus 145. I'll get to what I think about Pogues, but with Parkin, what I wrote down when I was watching tape on the guy, I really just wrote down that he seems to be a skilled enough heavyweight, because you get a lot of these like nobody heavyweights that come into the UFC because I guess the UFC needs heavyweights, that on regional tape you're like, this guy hits hard. He seems as if he might be good enough to beat a guy like, I don't know, let me pick a guy. Parker Porter, for example. A Braxton Beautiful Beast or whatever, Beautiful Monster. I think his last name was Smith, who got cut immediately because he tested positive. With a body like that, how are you going to test positive? But you see a lot of tape on these guys where it gives you hope. Like, and Mick, he seems to have the goods, right? He seems to have the ability to like not only strike, grapple. He doesn't necessarily have, I guess I haven't really seen his takedowns or his takedown defense, but I've seen him being able to get back up from bottom, which was impressive. Like for a guy that, you know, probably no wrestling background. I just don't really know how good he is. And the thing about Pogues, as much as I don't really think he is a great heavyweight, he is a very skilled fighter, which is crazy to say. He's got really good jiu-jitsu. He's got really good grappling. I think his striking's not too bad. His issue is that he's still a lightweight. Well, normally he used to fight at middleweight, then he moved up to light heavyweight. And then from light heavyweight, he moved up to heavyweight. I don't think he has a whole ton of power here to get the respect of a guy like Mick Parkins. I think the power will go to Parkins. I think he hits pretty damn hard. And I don't know if he has the fight IQ, which I hate to say, because like I want to sing the praises of Jamal Pogues. I really do think he's a pretty talented fighter. I do think he's got a pretty good skill set for heavyweight. It's just that I don't really believe in his fight IQ. Like when he was fighting Parisian, he was doing well on the feet, but he kept taking him down, which is great, you know, take him down. But at a certain point, the takedowns were becoming a bit more contentious. Like he was having a little bit more trouble keeping Parisian down. And I'm like, just beat his ass on the feet. He wasn't throwing anything from top position. I'm like, what are you doing, dude? Like, I know you're winning the fight, but like you're making it too close. And it seems to me as if he makes fights harder than they need to be. Like, you clearly have success on the feet. Why keep taking him down? Like, why make it harder for yourself? And I feel like he might do that again here. If he makes it hard on himself trying to go for takedowns, I just feel like he can get timed and he can get caught. Like, I don't know. I don't really trust Jamal Pogues to bet on him. And if you take Parkin, like, I don't blame you. I think he might have the goods. Again, I don't have too much info on him other than like he trains with Aspinall, and that might be enough to beat a guy like Pogues. But again, I do believe Pogues is a very solid fighter. Just at heavyweight, I just don't think he poses too much of a threat when it comes to like the heavier handed guys. And I do worry that it's really because it's heavyweight, the more skilled guy doesn't always win. And I think that Pogues, being the more skilled guy, might have the opportunity to make something stupid happen for himself and get knocked out or finished. So I'm staying away from it, but I got to go with the more skilled guy, because if push comes to shove and say Mick doesn't have a great gas tank or Mick can't get up from bottom, I think Pogues is probably going to have his way with him to a very possibly close decision, but still going Pogues' way. The other factor I forgot to bring up, because it's in England, all the English fighters minus one particular guy is going to have an advantage, and I'll get to who that guy is later. But yeah, with the crowd screaming, hometown decisions might happen. And that's another issue why I don't like thinking about betting Pogues here, because I feel as if he could allow himself to lose a hometown decision despite the fact that he won all 3 rounds. I'll just leave it at that. But I'll go with Pogues by decision, but not touching it. Next bout, Mark Diakiese versus Joe Alvarez. First off, if Joe makes weight, great. That's number one thing I'm looking forward to. So I'm not touching Joe Alvarez or either of these guys until I know that that fight's official. But Joe is minus 155. Come back on Diakiese. The Bone Crusher is plus 130. You know, Joe Alvarez at lightweight, he's a huge specimen. He is 6'3", 77-inch reach. He's a dangerous man, right? We saw what he did to, I was going to say Moicano, but it was Thiago Moises. He cut him open with elbows. He's a vicious man. Great chokes, great off of his back. I think he relies a little too much off of his back, like submission game, where, you know, better wrestlers are going to take advantage of him, like, you know, a certain guy did and fucked him up in, oh my God, Sarukian. Mark Diakiese, I don't know what to say about the guy. Like, I think he's talented. He's very athletic, very explosive, very dynamic. He has improved grappling, but I feel as if he was just kind of overwhelming guys that had zero grappling, so it makes his grappling look better. In this particular fight, I think he's kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. The rock being the elbows, knees, and fists of Alvarez, and the hard place being, I was going to make a joke about him getting choked out and then waking up with a boner, because he's probably going to get choked out here or submitted. Like, Diakiese, I don't know how he's going to fight this fight. Like, again, if it comes out where, like, everything happens fine, like the scales are fine, Joe Alvarez doesn't look like he's near death, comes out in great shape, I think Diakiese is going to have a tough time striking with him and potentially, like, panicking and trying to go for a takedown and getting caught in a guillotine or giving up his back or just whatever dumb thing that Diakiese can do if he panic wrestles here, because I feel like his body's now getting more conditioned to, like, hey, go for a takedown. And we saw what happened in his last fight. He couldn't get the takedown against Michael Johnson, and he ended up losing that decision. Now he's fighting a much longer guy who is more dangerous than Michael Johnson, just not as fast or as good with the boxing. Yeah, for me, I think Alvarez is going to get a submission eventually, round number 2 or 3. I'm sorry, round number 1 or 2. If Diakiese fights intelligently here, you know, he's going to have the crowd behind him. If he point fights Joe Alvarez, I think he's going to be faster than Joel. Attack the calves, point fight him, frustrate him, maybe hold him up against a cage, push away, get out the way, just use your speed and really point fight the guy. And then when you have your opportunities, either throw some big shots, take him down, but take him down safely. Don't go in head first. And I think you got a chance, really. Like, Joe Alvarez does not have the best takedown defense. It's just that he's super dangerous on his back. And I think if, say, Mark Diakiese does have success in the first round, which I think he will, I think Joe might be a really good spot to live bet, in the sense that he might be able to survive early. And then, say, he gets a good round on top where Joel's kind of throwing up submissions, but he's defending all of them. I do think that Diakiese might kind of be a little hesitant to get it to the ground again, because he kind of felt what Joel has. And then I think Joel might be at plus money at that point. And I think eventually that submission or that knockout is going to materialize, more than likely a submission. So I'll go with Joe Alvarez in the later rounds, like maybe round number 2, round number 3, hopefully. If it happens round number 1, I'll probably kick myself for not getting the odds on him, the minus 155, but I'll take my chances and probably taking him live. But I'll go with Alvarez. I just think that if he makes weight and he's not depleted and looking like Skeletor, I think he wins this fight eventually. Like, I get a feeling Mark could probably win a majority of the fight, and then he makes a mistake in the 3rd round. I can almost feel as if there's no way that Joe Alvarez loses other than like a freak accident, because Mark is just going to be begging to get submitted. To me, that's what it looks like. So I hope Mark does fight intelligently, because I love being proved wrong. I don't want to just go out there and say, like, this guy's going to get his ass beat, because MMA is predictable. Shouldn't be fucking predictable. In this case, it seems a little bit too predictable, so I'm hoping it doesn't come out the way I say it. So, but yeah, realistically, submission round number 2, Alvarez. Next bout, we've got Danny Roberts, Hot Chocolate, versus Johnny the Sluggernaut Parsons. I like Johnny Parsons. I like his nickname. I think he's a fun guy. I just don't think he's very top-level skilled. I don't really think he is UFC caliber, which sucks. Like, there's a lot of guys that get brought into the UFC that aren't UFC caliber. At least Johnny presents something fun exciting. He goes for it. He's a brawler. He's very technical with his brawling. He keeps his hands up. He doesn't just go out there swinging like a Trevor Peek. Like, he's definitely better than Trevor Peek, 100% better than Trevor Peek. I like the guy. I do. It's just that Danny Roberts is just the overall better guy. He's much bigger, 6'1" compared to the 5'9", a 74-inch reach. He's got the better boxing. He's got the better striking, kickboxing, better wrestling, better jiu-jitsu. Like, Johnny's a tough dude. He's got a good puncher's chance. Danny's been knocked out many times. I don't think his chin is great. It's not terrible. It's just not great. And I think Johnny has a puncher's chance to get him. But, Johnny's been away for a bit. I think he's had some concussion issues. He hasn't fought in 2 years now? About 2 years. If he wins, I'll be happy for him, right? But yeah, I'm not a big fan of betting the slugger not in this spot. I'm more interested in Roberts, who is, funny enough, he's -105. It's a pick 'em. I have to check my what is this, fightodds.com, fightodds.io, and he is a pick 'em with Parsons, which is crazy. Parsons -115. I don't know what Johnny's been talking about. I don't know if he's claiming he's going to knock him out in the first round, or if Danny's been saying, hey, I can't speak. I probably need to do research on Danny. I haven't heard any interviews. If he's like, I'm like, oh shit, maybe Johnny is to play. But if Danny is speaking correctly, fluently, in complete sentences, I'll pick Danny Roberts to win. I think he can potentially get a knockout himself. I really do think this is Danny's fight to lose, and he has to make the mistake for Johnny to win in this fight. As long as Danny fights intelligently, he wins this one any way he wants. I think he can get takedowns. I think he can outpoint him on the feet, possibly knock him out with hard shots. Like, Danny's a very good fighter. He's one of the better UK fighters out there, despite his record only being 18-7, which is not necessarily great. But the guy's solid, man. He's absolutely solid. I know he's getting older. I'm a fan of Danny Roberts. I faded him many times in the past, but he always surprises me in how tough he can be. And let's go from this. His next fight is Johnny Parsons. His last fight was Jack Della. Jack Della, complete night and day, right? So I'll go with Danny Roberts to win this one by, I'll say, knockout round number 3. I think Johnny's tough. I think eventually the cumulative damage will get to him, and Danny's just going to put the finishing blow on him in the later rounds. All right, I need to drink some water for this one because I'm going to go in on this one. All right. Bantamweight bout. We've got Dangerous Davy Grant versus Daniel Soncora Marcos. And the odds have it for -120. Marcos come back on Davy Grant +100. Right off the bat, I think Davy Grant +100 is an adequate line. I think it's a very well-lined fight. I think the odds should go for Marcos because of certain things that Davy kind of does to himself in the fights. But Davy's, obviously, his nickname is Dangerous for a reason. In the first round, he throws absolutely everything hard. Oh, man, I think the world of Davy. I think he's a strong guy. He's a good grappler. I believe, if I remember correctly, black belt in jiu-jitsu. I think he can probably, if he can get Daniel Marcos down early and hold him down, I think it's an imminent sign that the sub is on its way in that first round. But Daniel's got some interesting takedown defense. I think his takedown defense for a guy from Peru is very impressive. I like a lot of what Daniel does, but I do think, despite him being 14-0, I don't necessarily think he's been truly tested against really the caliber fighter he needs to be fighting. And I think Davy Grant right now is the perfect fighter to test Daniel Marcos, because if he can stuff the takedowns, if he can fight intelligently against a guy that is this dangerous, I think Marcos might have a very good career in the UFC. I don't think he'll necessarily be a championship level guy, but I think he can beat a lot of guys that you might not expect him to beat. Because right now, I think Davy, great chance to beat Daniel Marcos. He kind of expose his ground game, because Daniel's a very good striker. I like what he does defensively. I think defensively sound from the waist up is great, because he keeps his hands tight. Hands are always where they need to be. Moves very well. Eats a lot of leg kicks, which I don't like. And Davy throws really hard leg kicks. So the path to victory for Davy would be attack the legs early, but intelligently, because if you get a counter from Marcos, he's going to catch you, right? It's not like he's a super long dude. He's actually the same exact reach, 69, and then an inch of reach or height disadvantage. Davy's 1 inch taller. But I like what Marcos does with his legs, his kicks. He throws really nice teep kicks. He attacks the body very well. Like he's very patient but calculated is probably the better word, because I've seen certain fighters where it comes to, like, say, Bruno Brazil, who is just lazy, but Daniel Marcos may look lazy. He may look like he's not doing much, but he's more calculated to see what you're going to do to, say, counter you. Like the way he dismantled Simon Oliveira, like he made Oliveira just do what Oliveira was going to do. And I feel like it's very similar to what Davy Grant does. Like Oliveira goes for unnecessary techniques sometimes. And I think Davy Grant unnecessarily throws everything hard early because he wants to get you out of there. And especially with the crowd behind him, I get a feeling he might gas himself out. And he typically does. He slows down in that second round because he throws everything so hard. And there's a good chance he can get Marcos out of there early. But if Marcos survives, I think the later rounds he's going to pick Davy apart. That's, again, if he can survive that first round of Davy Grant, which I truly do believe he will. I think that Marcos has a good chance to possibly, and I'll phrase this the best way possible, but I get a feeling he can bring back the old Davy Grant, in the sense that back in the day, you can guarantee that Davy Grant's going to get knocked the fuck out. Like he's going to get finished. And as of late, I think what Davy's been doing, he's been all offense, ridiculous offense, which in certain cases, in his case, is a very good defense. Like the moment you're throwing hard and people are defending, you're not getting clipped on the chin. But I think his hands are good enough. I think he attacks the body well. He's going to sap the energy of Davy Grant. And again, like I was mentioning with Simon tends to go for like stupid spins. He went for too many takedowns and he just got chewed up against the cage, knees to the body. And what I like the most about Marcos in that fight is that when he let his hands go, it was absolutely vicious. Like he attacked the body, he attacked the head, and he ended it with a head kick as Oliveira was trying to escape like the cage. I think Daniels is pretty damn good. Like even on the Contender Series against Brandon Lewis was taking an ass whooping. He was going for takedowns, and yeah, he's not high caliber quite yet, but he was going for takedowns, and Marcos was defending, I believe, every single one, if not a majority of them. I like Marcos in the later rounds. I think Marcos might be a good live betting situation. It could potentially be that, say, for example, you pick Marcos, you have a ticket on him at -120 because, say, you believe me, like, oh, Johnny's right. I think Marcos does show some promise. And you might be cursing my fucking name because he's not doing anything. He's just standing there. He's eating leg kicks. But come the second round, or maybe even late in the first round, he's going to start letting the hands go. He's going to start touching up Davy, kicking him hard to the body. And by then, I would hope that he's a dog odds. So I'm going to probably wait on him to see if he survives that first round. And then at that point, I'm going to take him to win. Because I think once he kind of like sees what he needs to see, once he starts putting in like the work to the body, and Davy slows down, Davy's going to be there to get hit. And I think there's a really good chance that, again, Daniel knocks out Davy Grant. So I'll go with Marcos in the later rounds, probably round number 2 or 3, gets a finish. Going to be a hell of a fight. I'm really looking forward to this one for sure. All right, next bout, this is the main card opener at featherweight. We've got Lerone Murphy versus Josh Culibao. Interesting bout. We've got Murphy -160 comeback on Culibao +130. So in this fight, I think it's super close. I don't want to go into too much detail, but I think Josh, very, very skilled. I think he's so awkward. He switches stances. The way he took the neck of Melsick was incredibly impressive. Like he did that incredibly wrong, taking the rear naked choke. He got the choke in first, and then he got the hooks in. So he went submission before position, which is the incorrect way to go about it, but it's not necessarily incorrect if it works. But it worked for him because he just snatched it up. I'm very impressed by him. He's been impressing me a lot. I think he's always a guy you can really hang your hat on if you want to take him at dog odds. Like I think he's a very solid guy. But again, this is England. We've got an undefeated English fighter who's very good himself, good boxing. I think his wrestling obviously has to get some work done on that. He still keeps getting taken down a little too easily, but he's making the right adjustments, like being able to reverse Daniel Santos. I don't want to say Makwan because really that was not the best version of Lerone. He kept getting taken down. But then I don't know how you could say, like, did Did Lerone Murphy time the knee perfectly, or did Makwan self-implode like he normally does? So it's really up to you how you want to see that. In this particular case, I'm going to take a little bit away from Murphy and say that it was more Makwan self-imploding. But I think Murphy's very good. I think his striking's good. I think he's going to have the power advantage. I don't know who's going to have the speed advantage. They're both very quick. I think Josh, being a funkier guy, he can definitely get a split decision out of Lerone Murphy. But because it is going to be a hometown crowd for Murphy, I can't bet against him here. Like, he is, again, minus 160. I don't think this is a bet worthy fight right here. It's more of like, it's going to be a fun fight. And shit, I think either guy can get a finish, whether it be Culibao knockout or submission, or Lerone Murphy possibly by knockout. He catches Culibao kind of like maybe slipping, like maybe the speed might be too much. I don't think so. I think it's going to be a very tit for tat kind of fight. I'll go with Murphy by decision just because it's so close. There's no real need for me to like go into detail as to who I think is going to win. I think either guy can win this one, but realistically, my money will be on Murphy. Like, I like the spots where, say, Josh might look like he's winning, and we can get Murphy at like, I don't know, hopefully like plus 600 or something, because it looks like Josh got the 2 rounds. And then we'll be very pleasantly surprised when they call Lerone Murphy's name as the winner. So that's kind of where I'm kind of headed here if I end up live betting it. But I'll go with Murphy by a decision. Very, very good fight to start off the main card. Next bout, we've got Jai Herbert versus Firas Ziam. Near pick'em here, minus 115 for the Black Country Banger. And the Smile Killer is minus 105. So we got France versus England. A very fun fight. Both are 6 foot tall, 2-inch reach advantage for Jai Herbert. I mentioned earlier that the majority of the fighters here are going to have the crowd advantage, being that they are English, not Jai Herbert. I don't think Jai Herbert does well when it comes to having a hometown crowd under the UFC banner, I should say. I think previously, obviously, he's had some good success in Cage Warriors, but for whatever reason, under the big lights of the UFC, when they come to the O2 or they come to London, he implodes in such a horrible way. Like his fight with Topuria, he looked great in the first round, slows down, gets literally, he died. He died that night. I really do believe a little piece of him died in that night, because like the next fight, I believe he fought, what the hell's his name? The monster Kyle Nelson. I believe that was also in the O2. Let me double check. Was it? Yes, it was also in London, England. He literally, to me, looked like he forgot how to fight. Like, he just did not have that warrior spirit, if you want to call it anything like that. He didn't have any interest in like doing anything to win that fight, and he ended up winning the fight regardless. But in this fight, I think Ziam is the play for me. I think that Jai might have a good first round, but everything to me screams that Ziam is the better fighter. I think he's more motivated to win. I know how good Jai is. I like Jai a lot. I love his style. I love his feints. I love his boxing. You know, here he's not going to have a huge reach advantage like he normally does. Realistically, that doesn't matter. I want to curse there, but I want to reduce the F-bombs that I use. It really doesn't matter. He's been knocked out by guys with 0 reach, and now he's got a guy with more reach than he's normally used to, I would say. And Ziam, good grappling on his end. He's getting better at MMA. He's a kickboxer by trade. He has good movement himself. He's not as flashy or as, you know, clean with the hands as Herbert is, but there was a moment in the Figlak fight where he threw a really beautifully quick left hook. It was like picture perfect, and had it landed cleaner, I think he would have knocked the hell out of Figlak, but he beat the crap out of Figlak in that fight, and he used every aspect of MMA, and that's what I like about Ziam, is that he doesn't just strike with you. He mixes in takedowns of his own. He can get top control. He's got good cardio. I think the first round's going to be close, go either way. After that, it's going to be Ziam kind of taking over. I can see maybe Jai Herbert getting maybe some clean punches to the body and to the head of Firas Ziam, but I think Ziam's chin is definitely better than Herbert's, who's, you know, I hate to say it, man, Herbert's chin has just been cracked too many times. It's almost like being in England under the UFC banner. is his absolute kryptonite. I think Herbert can at least get but Ziam can get a decision at bare minimum, or he can knock out Jai Herbert. Like, it just depends on what Ziam wants to do. If he wants to prove, like, hey, I'm the better mixed martial artist, he can really prove it by essentially dominating the fight. If he wants to go out there and get a knockout, I think he can do that as well. So I'll go with Ziam. I think he's definitely a guy I want to take a shot on, even at, minus money. So I'll take Ziam by a decision at mere minimum. Next bout, we've got Paul Craig versus Andre Muniz. The Bear Jew is moving down to middleweight, and I've seen pictures of him on Instagram of how he looks. Not his body, but his face does look a little sucked in. Call me crazy, but I do think that if Paul Craig is more realistic about, like, hey, I'm never going to be a UFC champ, but I would love to keep my job, and I would love to put on good fights and get, submissions of the night or knockouts of the night, I think his better shot is to move up to heavyweight. He's a pretty big dude. He's 6'3", 76-inch reach. He's definitely got the grappling advantage over a ton of guys at heavyweight. Moving down, reducing the amount of water you have in your brain at middleweight, I don't know. I really don't know. I know how good Paul Craig is when it comes to the skill. Like, he's a very skilled guy on the mat. Like, he can get submissions. I love his meme submissions, man. Even when he cost me money, it's like, oh, you got me, It's Paul Craig. Of course it was a submission. Like, I had money on Nikita Krylov, and I'm like, he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. He's not stupid. He's not going to throw himself into a triangle. Oh, shit, he threw himself into a triangle. Oh, geez, you got me again, Paul Craig. I like Paul a lot, which is why I'm like, I don't want to see him get knocked the fuck out by Andre Muniz, which I think is going to happen. I have to save my F-bombs for when it really mattered here against Paul Craig. Muniz, you can say he got exposed his last fight. He just fought a really tough guy. Like, I did lose money on Muniz. I thought he was going to be more spectacular in that fight. He almost fought like he knew he had everything to lose, and because of that, he lost everything to that country bumpkin. Oh, wow. What's his name? Yeah, Brendan Allen. I don't know. I don't know what to say. Like, you can make the argument of, like, Muniz got choked out his last fight. He's going to get choked out again. No, I don't think Paul Craig's going to be able to submit Andre Muniz. I think by the time it hits the mat, it's going to be because Paul Craig got knocked out. And Muniz, he's got some long arms. He's got a 2-inch reach advantage. He throws his punches kind of wild. If Paul Craig comes out here and knocks out Muniz or submits him, I'd be happy, just because, like, I want to see Paul Craig's longevity. I don't want to see him take more damage. I've seen him take too much damage. But realistically, like, Muniz is probably going to really hurt Craig. I really do hope Paul Craig looks good at middleweight. Like, I really would like to see him, like, prove me wrong that maybe middleweight was his division all along. He was just fighting at a higher weight class. Maybe the punches at middleweight won't affect him as much as they did at light heavyweight. That'd be great. But yeah, Paul Craig, to me, I don't think he's going to be able to withstand it if he's going to be cutting another 20 pounds. So I'll go with Paul Craig to get knocked out first round by Andre Muniz. Moving on, we've got a great fight, Nathaniel Wood versus Andre Fili. Featherweight bout. I hate the fact that Wood is minus 200. I don't know if he covers that price tag. Realistically, I'll give you my reasonings why I think he could. It just really depends on what Fili does. But Fili's a plus 160. I kept debating. I'm like, am I wrong in thinking that Fili is a good underdog play here at plus 160? He's a bigger guy. Is probably the best fighter that Nathaniel Wood has fought in a while, right? Let's take a look at his criteria here. He's fought Charles Jourdain. I really thought Jourdain was going to put up a better fight, but to me, it really proved to me how really goddamn good Nathaniel Wood is. Very technical, very speedy, very hard-hitting at featherweight. Charles Rosa, it was an embarrassing fight. Like, Charles, no. Casey Kenny, I thought he beat Casey Kenny, which is crazy. I think this was in Abu Dhabi when, if I use my powers of memory, he fought Justin Gaethje. Khabib fought Justin Gaethje in Abu Dhabi, and I really thought that I thought Nathaniel Wood will beat him. Like, it's just crazy. And John Castaneda, good fighter, but short notice bout. John Dodson was his UFC debut. I don't want to, whatever. Like, I know he got knocked out, but I was going to say, like, I kind of felt the fact that he was going to get knocked out in that late round, but whatever. I missed the line of taking Dodson. But anyways, Fili, bigger guy. He's what got 5 inches in height on him and 5 inches in reach on him. Like touchy Fili is a solid fighter, but I know he can get beat by speedier guys. Like on the feet, he can be a bit slow. Like he looks fast in certain fights. Like for example, with him versus Pineda, he looked ridiculously fast because he was fighting a really brainless zombie in that fight. Not to disrespect Pineda, but like really, that dude fights like a zombie sometimes. In this fight, Nathaniel Wood being the more technical guy, the better boxer, better striker, more complete fighter, in my opinion, I think he's got a really good chance to potentially hurt Fili, maybe finish him, but definitely win a decision comfortably with obviously the hometown advantage. Because Nathaniel Wood being the better fighter, it kind of screams that he should win this one. But I'm always stuck with like, well, he's kind of undersized for featherweight. And I always thought to myself, I was watching tape on him, I'm like, guy's really good. Like everything he does against Charles Jourdain was impressive. Like everything he did was like so calculated and smart. And I kept thinking like, well, why can't he potentially fight for the title? Like maybe because he's undersized. Well, Volkanovski, the champ, is undersized, and we just saw what he did to a much taller, more dangerous fighter. Why can't Nathaniel Wood do it? And I'm like, well, maybe I'm wrong. But what are the ways that Nathaniel Wood could lose this fight? Obviously, if Fili hits him with something hard, uses his reach advantage, keeps him away. Fili's not an idiot, but he does a lot of dumb things. He can get beat by guys he should beat. And I remember watching the Algeo fight, and I'm like, Algeo, despite him being an awkward, lengthy fighter and kickboxer and whatever, he's still landing on Fili, and Fili doesn't look very fast. Nathaniel Wood is much faster. And then it kind of brought back memories of the, oh, wow, what's his name? The Brito fight, where Brito just came in close. He's 2 inches taller than Wood, but he just got in there and knocked him the fuck out. And I'm like, well, Nathaniel Wood could probably do that as well, or at least something similar, maybe hurt Fili. But then I'm like, well, what are the chances Fili wins? I'm like, well, if Fili uses his wrestling here, I think he can really demonstrate that sometimes being this more skilled fighter doesn't matter when you're the bigger fighter. And I think Fili is skilled enough to say, take his back, control him, put in the body triangle on him, go for submission, just kind of neutralize the smaller Wood if, say, things aren't going well on the feet. Not to say that I think it's going to be a blowout on the feet. I just think that Nathaniel Wood is just more technical, that he can definitely win a kickboxing match against Andre Fili. And in the MMA fight, where a guy like Touchy Fili has been training out of Team Alpha Male for years, I think he's smart enough to be able to win this fight with the wrestling. Like, I do believe Nathaniel Wood can stuff takedowns, but if Fili gets under him and picks his ass up, you know what I mean? Like, I don't like the odds on Wood, so I'm kind of maybe justifying too much on Fili. I'm gonna pick Wood by decision. I think he's so technically good that he can beat a guy like Fili, who makes a lot of dumb mistakes on the feet. But if Fili fights intelligently, goes for that takedown, and if he does implement a body triangle technique against Wood, it's gonna piss off the fucking crowd so much. Oh man, it's gonna be great. Like, I love salty fans. But yeah, we'll see what happens in this one. I'm not really particularly interested in taking Wood. I might take a shot on Fili. If he gets knocked out, he gets knocked out. If he loses a boneheaded decision to Nathaniel Wood, it happens. But if he fights the way I hope he does, he can definitely win this fight. It's a winnable fight, being the bigger guy, not maybe as skilled as Wood on the feet, with the hands, with the kicks or whatever, but I think he's good enough to scrape out a win here. So I'll still go with Wood as a pick, but I'm looking at Fili potentially taking him as a dog. All right, not going to spend too much time on this one. You're either going to take at flyweight Julija Storliarenko, or you're going to take the champ Molly McCann. Which one are you going to take? Round number 1, submission or just submission for the plus 260 dog in Storliarenko, maybe taking your money line. She's a much bigger girl. She's 5'7". We've seen Molly McCann get completely dominated on the ground by Erin Blanchfield, but Julija Storliarenko ain't no Erin Blanchfield, right? Like, Molly was not giving up. She was not going to allow herself to tap out. She eventually had to, right? It's Erin Blanchfield, the uncrowned champ of the division. But with Julija, if she can't get that submission in the first round, she will break, and Molly is going to gladly, she will gladly give her the way out. Like, Molly fights a lot differently in England. She's going to have the whole crowd behind her. She's essentially the main event to an extent because, like, I think the bigger pop is going to come with Molly, especially because Patty's going to be there with her. You know, Molly, she ain't great, but she's absolutely a fun dog to fight. You know, she's a great fighter to watch, especially in England. But she's minus 350, so it's like you cannot. There's no way. Like, you can't. Don't do it. Like, if part of me, sincerely, if you are considering betting Molly McCann, you can reach me at tigerbombmma@gmail.com. I have a degree in behavioral science. I can talk you out of it. I can be a beneficial person for you. I can talk you off the ledge. I care. I don't want you to do that. I don't want to have you make a huge mistake you're going to regret. Do not bet Molly McCann unless it's by finish, probably knockout. But yeah, Julija Storliarenko, I think I'm not telling you anything you don't know already. You can take her as a dog, put a little bit of money on her, take her by submission. Not much to say. I'm going to go with Molly McCann, round number 2 TKO. If she survives Julija, which I think she will. I think Julija's, again, big girl. She can get her to the ground. She can get a submission. But if Molly survives and Julija just falls off the back or something, going for the armbar, I think Molly's going to beat her ass in the later rounds. So I'm going to go with Molly McCann by second round knockout. But again, do not touch that line. Do not parlay the girl. This is not lesser girls that are like not dangerous, right? Like, Molly's weakness is on the ground to an extent, and Julija's got that meme armbar. So anyways, moving on. Main event, heavyweight bout, Tom Aspinall, or as I call him, Black Tom Aspinall, Brother Tom, versus Marcin Tybura. And Brother Tom here, he is minus 450. Comeback on Tybura is plus 350. Now, just to kind of get it out of the way, the whole knee injury for Tom Aspinall really sucked. Like, he could have potentially fought for the title. Had he beaten Blaydes, it was either going to be him or Gane fighting Jones for the title. Or I don't remember what happened in that in-between where it was Francis. So no, Francis wasn't going to fight him. But for that interim bout, or the vacated bout, I think Tom Aspinall would have been a great opponent for John Jones, because I think he would have put up a bigger fight. Maybe Jones would have still won, but it would have been, to my opinion, it would have been Tom Aspinall fighting for it. So, like, it really sucks because I know he would have knocked out Curtis Blaydes, because, like, we saw what Blaydes allowed himself to happen with Pavlovich. I just think that Tom eventually was going to catch him, because Blaydes loves to strike too damn much. He's not the brightest wrestler. But yeah, like, I like me some Tom Aspinall. I think he is incredibly talented. I think he's very good on the feet, good boxing, good hands, good jiu-jitsu. He's just a very intelligent fighter. And, like, to put it to you this way, like, using MMA math, you know, Tybura lost to Volkov and Tom Aspinall beat Volkov. And I, to this day, remember thinking, like, what am I going to do? Which one am I going to bet? Am I going to bet Aspinall? I'm going to bet the guy with the incredibly long reach and height and ridiculous record of like 4,037 losses, whatever. And I'm like, shit, which one am I going to take? And I'm like, I got to go with Tom Aspinall. Like, you know, he might be able to pull it off. You know, it's a tough fight for him, the biggest fight of his career. He made it look absolutely easy. He made me look like an idiot, because he takes him down. And what does he do to his long arms? He puts him in a straight arm lock, straight arm bar. And it's like, it was so simple. I'm like, of course he was going to do that. Why wouldn't you have done that? That would be the easiest method to beat a guy like Volkov, using his long arms and getting him in that straight arm lock. I still feel shame for not thinking of it myself, of like, I was doubting Tom Aspinall at that time. Not anymore. The biggest issue, obviously, with his knee. I do worry that he might not be as explosive, but watching him kind of training on Instagram, which I hate to be one of those Instagram stalkers, but he looks pretty good. He still looks like he's got the energy. He's still young. He's 30 years old, 37 years old for Tybura. And what it is about Tybura, and I think I wrote it down pretty well, eloquently, if you will, with Tybura, he uses his size well. Obviously, when he's fighting guys that have both either no cardio, he could eke out decisions just being the more active guy, or guys who have zero grappling. He will survive and then finish them. Like, for example, he beat guys like Walt Harris. Walt Harris bum rushed him. He got tired, got taken down, and got finished. We've got Greg Hardy, bum rushed him, hurt him. Tybura got a hold of him like a zombie grab. It's like if you're playing video games and you do a counter, right? Like you get attacked, you hit the counter, and he grabs him and he does a special move. That's what Tybura does, but he does it super groggy and exhausted because he just got his head kind of rocked. But he gets guys down, he finishes them just like Greg Hardy. I don't see that happening here with Tom Aspinall. I think Tom Aspinall is going to select his shots very well. He's going to be the faster guy. He's going to hurt Tybura, guaranteed. Tybura might be able to clinch him up enough to slow Tom down to gather his wits, but I think Tom is just too good. I think he's just too good of a heavyweight and too good of an athlete and a boxer. I think eventually he is going to finish Tybura in the first or the second round. I give it only 2 rounds, in my opinion, that Tom's going to have to knock out Tybura. I don't think Tybura is going to have much for Aspinall other than maybe clinching him up against the cage. You know, he's not going to be the bigger guy here. I don't really believe it because it says Tom is 6'5" with a 78-inch reach compared to the 6'3" of Tybura. For reference, like Tybura and Paul Craig, who is now a middleweight, they're the same height, and 6'5" is pretty damn big for Aspinall. Like, I don't think the whole Tybura clinching against the cage using his weight is going to work against Aspinall. I don't see a way Aspinall loses this fight unless he re-injures his knee. And I hate to say that out loud, but it's like the truth. Like, that's really the only way I see him losing this fight is some goofy injury, which I feel bad saying. I don't want to put the kibosh on him, but I really do think Aspinall knocks him out in under 2. I think he's just that good. The odds obviously not great. Probably take Aspinall inside the distance. But we'll see if Tybura proves me wrong. Well, shit, you know, he proved me wrong. He's a consistent winner at heavyweight. He's 24-7 overall, but the guy wins fights. But let's just see who he's been beating, right? Alexander Romanov. I think everyone and their grandmothers knew. Let's just wait and see, and maybe live bet Marcin Tybura. Just take Tybura straight. I think, you know, he's a bit of a fraud and Romanov, and we found out to be the truth. And then he beat Blagoy Ivanov, a guy who got decisioned by Romanov. Like, and even Blagoy had some success against Tybura, and he's a much smaller man. Like, Tom's we call him Black Tom for a reason. He's gonna put a Black Lives Matter ass whooping on Marcin Tybura. So I've got Tom Aspinall, round number 2 knockout. To end the night for the Brits, probably it could be a clean sweep other than Jai Herbert. So I'm going to look forward to this fight. The entire card is great, but those are my predictions for this card for Aspinall versus Tybura. Let me know what you think in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, follow the Discord if anything. If you want to talk shit on me during the Discord, bring it on. I like getting my shit rubbed in my face, like, oh, you suck. But like, I would prefer if people were to tell me like you suck in a more creative way. Just telling me that I suck is like kind of lame. Like, I don't respect people like that. Like, be more creative. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments below. Again, Johnny Tiger Bomb MMA, and we'll see you at the next fights. Hopefully, literally, if I do end up getting tickets to UFC 291. If you're in the Salt Lake area and you want to spit in my face, let me know. I'll be there gladly. Catch you next time.